So first of all, I want to explain my thoughts about small blind against big blind. I will explain a little bit how we can play on the big blind situations, how we can use some different lines that will help us to win some more chips. Again, small against the big blind is the situations we are playing not so often, because if we like understand how it works, for example, the button is opening 50% of the time. I mean, in GPV situations. Let's make it like that. So half of the time or even less, we are gonna play small blind if you are playing 3 max. So you can understand that nobody should open for many in these positions. So it's like be less than 10% of the chance you're gonna play small blind against big blind. So first of all, my main point is you have to play not in the style that you have a lot of win rates or you're like printing money, but you don't have to lose a lot. I mean, that's the I think you need to think about small blind in that way, because some people are losing like minus 15. It's okay. Some guys are plus, even making plus win rates on the big small blind, and it's cool. I mean, you can do that on a little bit lower stakes, but if you are making like minus 5 or minus less than the minus 10 win rate on the small blind, it's good. I mean, it's not like you can always make improvements, and I will show you how you can make it, what things you can do on small blind against the big blind, and how we adjust our strategy when we're playing different limits. Because I don't want to say that you have to like open up small blind 35%, like 60-70% of the time, because that's just not true. I mean, there is limits that strategy works, but in other way, you have to be very careful when you go higher or play higher stakes. People are gonna push back and they're not gonna give up so easily on some boards. But still, I think all the things I'm gonna explain will gonna work like in average 6, 20, 30 buy-in, so it will be much more like freedom for you, because I see a lot of mistakes. First of all, it's like autopilot, how we call it, when people just play like limp, one big blind, check, and so on. They're not barreling enough, they don't have different sizes, they don't use check raises, double check raises, leads, and so on, so on. So yeah, first thing first is differences between chip stacks. First of all, let's jump straight in. The GTO says that we want to like 20% of the time just raise. For you, I think normal strategy is 50% time and more. I mean, if you're playing limits $30 and less. Because first things first, people are not playing back. The strategy where we want to use like much more limps and not so much raises is when we start playing $50 and higher stakes. Because they're the people who are gonna push us back, and they're gonna try to exploit us. They're not gonna fold anything. They're gonna raise on the position, on the flops, turns, rivers, and so on, so on. So our strategy mainly is the weaker the player is on the big blind, the more you can attack him. And for example, as you can see, 3.5 is a raise, so it makes sense. But we have to understand that not all the sizes we want to use with 3.5. In 20 big blinds, we want to use 3x. In 100 big blinds, we want to use 4x. So, and yeah, as you can see, there is some changes in range, how we construct too. But I will
a question, if
Yeah.
I can. Okay, I understand raising more, but my question is more of a like range construction, right? Like, for example, versus like passive fish, right? We could argue that we just raise linearly, like our best 50, and then limp everything else, right?
Yeah.
But how would you like go around like I don't know, like versus very aggressive reg, you just play theory, right? But where is the point where you kind of okay, this is bit tighter player, maybe like weaker reg. I don't know, like it seems like clean, like versus like aggressive player, we are like playing basically theory, versus big whale, we are playing very linearly, and then in between, I'm not sure like what do we do, like kind of like
against the big whale, I think we just want to open up with more bluffs. There is no like linear hands. I think we want to use some middle hands that we limp. I will explain it a little bit later because
Sure,
first
sure,
of
sure,
all
sure.
I want to explain the sizes, yeah, because there is some key differences with the sizes, and I will explain what kind of hands we want to use. I mean, against the good players or players we respect, or you can call it as you want. But yeah, first things first is that in when we get deeper, the races gets a little bit less, and there is actually the idea why the machine does these things. Why he raises like, as you can see, more suited hands, offsuited hands he raises a little bit less, and as you can see, aces he's limping more than he's raising, and there is an explanation for that. First things first is that when he limps, he has a chance. First of all, they has the split sizes when you isolate 6.5 and 3.5, but usually people are gonna isolate 3.5. That's me. You can actually limp 3-bet, and as you can see, now you can see more linear limp 3-bet range. So he's limp 3-betting all the suited hands, which usually people don't do that. And as you can see, all the best hands, what he limp 3-bets. And he uses the split sizes even. As you can see, he's like 5xing you and so on, so on. So actually, it's makes sense that he's limp 3-betting aces because he can make the pre-flop like pot like 25 blinds, 26 blinds, depends what size you use on the pre-flop. So after you limp 3-bet and he calls, now SPR is like 3x or less than 3. So it's much more easier to get all the stack. And I will show you examples in the PKOs that change drastically. But still, as you can see, he uses limp 3-bet strategy more with aces, kings, and all the nuts hands because he can make our opponent to stack them, and he gets some kind of understanding of the range because I see a lot of people just raising all the aces, and you're playing a much wider range. I mean, of course, if
Uh,
they're checking back, yeah.
can I ask about limp re-raising? Like what I did, I did like download like millions of hands and then looked at like population tendencies, right? And then
Mm.
it was basically what happens is they ISO, and then when you limp raise them, they overfold, right? Like they should be this frequency, they are like 10%
Yeah,
less,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I believe that it would lead us to that we can just pure frequency like limp raise like low suited ace or offsuit ace, I mean low, maybe even low offsuit kings, right? Like would you like, okay, this is what theory would do, but would you in game in especially in lower stakes limp re-raise more of like bluffs?
That's actually a good question because it's all the small blind and big blind spots. I forgot to say it usually depends on the player which you're playing because there's some guys who are isolating like 30% of the time. There's some guys who are isolating 80% time, and the guys who are isolating like 70% plus of the time, you can easily just all your offsuited hands, which are with the blocker, King X, Ace X hands, which you try to limp. You can profitably just limp 3-bet use the like bigger size, so you have a little bit better understanding when he calls what kind of range he has on the post flop. And if he 3-bets, of course you just fold, and there is no problem with that. But yeah, I still gonna use against the guys who isolate. I use more limping strategy because I want to build a pot and I just want to execute all my bluffs, all my value hands, all the middle-ish hands, so I have no problem with that. First, actually, it's good advice if the guys who are playing like lower stakes and doesn't feel comfortable with the limp strategies, try to play in GPV situations too, the limp strategy, because if you get more and more hands in these kind of spots, you will get much more comfortable when later stages, because I see a lot of people when they play like their strategy 70-80% time from small blind they're raising, and then they go in a deep stage, they have ICM situations, the strategy changes drastically. They have to like limp more, not so much raising. I mean, they're trying to raise some chip leaders, but you still have to like limp fold, limp call, or limp raise, use strategy more. And I see they feeling like not in greatest shape. Like I can tell you that because I see a lot of mistakes. they're not used to these kinds of situations because their strategy always from attack, from regression. They like to raise, then bet, use some check raises maybe sometimes, and they feel comfortable in that kind of situation because the range is a little bit narrow, as you can call, because he raised, so there's some trashy hands that he fold on the pre-flop, then he folds on the flop, and so on, so on. And you get on all streets, you get some folds, much more than you need. But yeah, limp 3-bet strategy is, as I will explain a little bit later, I will always try to explain, first of all, what kind of hands we use, what GPV thinks about these kind of hands, and then we'll go after that. But yeah, limp 3-bet strategy usually helps us with the higher hands because we can build the pot much more easier. When we just raise 4 blinds and just get call, we just get like 9 big blinds on the flop. So SPR gets like 9 x or 10x. So for us, it's much easier. Yeah, it sucks when the guy checks backs. So you have to be careful against which guys you are limping. If the guy is not isolating enough, maybe like he's isolating like 20% of the time, as you can see, the machine is isolating how much? Like 40% time, but he's like isolating less than 40, like 30, 20% time. There is no such thing as limp 3-bet because the guy is gonna just play his hand straight. He's not gonna bluff you, he's not gonna try to mix some bluffs. So you just have to all your value hands against the nittier guys who are playing very passive on the big blind. You have to just raise and don't try to like make the limp 3-bets because they're gonna be very scared and they're gonna overfold in every line. So with this aces on all your nuts hands against the weaker players who are very passive, just raise them. There is no point of limp 3-betting and so on. But against the aggressive guys, regulars, or the players who try to win in this game, you can use this strategy and it works perfect. First of all, you get all the folds on the pre-flop, so you get like 4 big blinds and then fold with all these trashy hands. And these guys, I mean, I call it these guys from the stables or other stables who are playing, they like to use isolate much more because that's their strategy. I mean, that's how I tell my students to exploit the guys who are weaker. If they limp fold enough, you can just isolate all the trashy hands and you make a plus EV decisions. So it's very easy for us. And people are not limp 3-betting enough, people are not limp calling enough, so and they're surely limp folding too much. So our strategy is isolating much more than the machine does. So that's the main reason. But yeah, things I want to point is be careful with the sizes. I mean, I see a lot of guys who are making mistakes. They're isolating 3.5 or attacking from the small blind with the 3.5. When you get to deeper stacks, like 60 blinds deep or 70 blinds deep, use the bigger size with the raise, 4x at least. Because, I mean, we want to at least get some folds, and with the trash hands, like Jack 7 maybe, let's see what kind of hand. Jack 6 is folding, yeah. Jack 7 is like borderline, yeah. So we want to use at least, we get like 37% of folds. So we have some understanding what kind of range has for our opponent. So we understand that he doesn't have like ace deuce offsuit or 10-3 offsuit. So yeah, you have a little bit understanding that his range gets a little bit narrow. Yeah, but still, yeah, don't use like size 3x on 100 blinds deep or 2.7x on 100 blinds deep. At least 4x. And you can easily go for 4.5x if you use some bluffs more that you want for with the like, for example, some kind of king x hands, queen x hands that plays a little bit poorly out of position. So you can up the size with these kind of hands. That helps you like narrow a little bit range, because defending range against 4.5x and 3.5x is different for players. So you have a little bit better understanding that you get against the stronger range, and theoretically speaking, you actually can bluff a little bit less in these kind of situations when you use much bigger sizes, 4.5x. Some Brazilians actually use 5.5 and 6.5 sizes because they want to like narrow a very narrow range, and then they play against. I mean, they're not c-betting enough, in these kind of situations after when you call 5x raise, but still they're gonna use like on some dry heavy boards, king x or ace high boards, they're gonna just c-bet and just get all the folds from all these kind of hands. But yeah, the main thing is be careful with the sizes. Don't mess it up, because I see a lot of situations where people are just like using the wrong sizes. Let's show you the 20 blinds deep. Yeah, as you can see, there's small ins, 3x sizes. When 20 blinds and less we get. If we go like 40 blinds deep, we can get 2.2x,
I
2.5x.
have a question about like this very short. Like this is more of a like creative line, what might be very wrong, right? But I have seen some people doing it in different formats. But like they would make, let's say, they are on 14 big blinds, they would make like 10 big blind raise, right? And the idea is that people would not would treat it as a bit stronger, right, than if you just went all in. So you might get some extra fold equity, right? Like, because while they try to figure out what is this 10 big blind raise. Like, what do you think of that? Like kind of going all in, but like kind of, but kind of leaving like some room for the opponent to make mistake because you make it like 10 big blinds.
I will say that I think it's a little bit optimistic. I mean, of course, there's some weaker players who might change the range that you shove or use the 10 blinds, but with players I'm speaking, they're not gonna make the mistake. They're just thinking that you're just shoving 14 blinds. That's it. I mean, that's the thing you
Okay.
did. That's it, Kagbu.
Sure.
And
Yeah, sure.
yeah. And so that's main reason I like to think about more the theory, like uh, how the game works. Because some guys I see the uses like exploits, like, oh, I'm gonna shove, not gonna shove, but let like left one blind behind and use some other things. I mean, this is the kind of mind games. I mean, you can do that, but I don't see like a lot of value. I think the just good sound strategy makes much more money than just all other things.
No,
And
like
actually, yeah,
there was this like a very long time ago. There was this one player who did like all in minus one big blind, and his idea was that if someone is on phone, right, not focused, they might not realize that you are all in.
yeah.
When they-
Actually, there is some value in these kind of situations. For example, when we have like three big blinds left, or I don't know, like three big blinds left, or 3.5. You can use the min raise, because some people doesn't see. They see just the min raise and they think, I mean, they auto fold. They think
I
that,
mean, there is even an extreme of like if you are two big blinds, right? Under two, where if you min raise, you would be all in. You could limp a small blind and then jam any flop, and you will actually generate more folds, right? Like if you min raised, you would just get 100% call, but because it's two big blind jam, right? But if you limped and then just jammed one big blind on flop every time, you would actually get people overfolding, right?
I don't know about that.
Like, because
I
they would
can.
need to call like 20% equity, and it's like kind of hard, right? Like if it's like ace king seven, right? Actually, your like nine juice actually have enough equity, like versus two random hands, right?
Yeah, but
So
I mean, when you get to, it's, I mean, in PKO formats, I cannot see the situation where you can fold anything, because if you need like one big blind to win like six blinds and you have a PKO in play,
yeah, but
I
you
mean,
know it's ace king seven, and you have like six juice, right? You know, you're sitting.
yeah, I understand you. Yeah, in pre-shots, sometimes can work, but usually that's a long shot. Yes. Second thing I want to show is the PKO formats. PKO situations. That's in PKO formats, which we play a lot more than pre-shots, as you can understand. Everything revolves about who covers who. As you can see, for example, if the small blind doesn't cover the big blind, we are 100% limping. If the situation is different, we can raise a lot more because we're covering big blinds. Actually, in super deep stacks, he's still using the strategy limp 3-bets with the stronger hands because he wants to build the pot. And if you see the limp isolate is still 40% because you're too deep. I mean, you still want to use all the linear hands, as you can see, the more suited hands, strong hands, hands that he comfortably after he gets limp 3-bet, he calls. And usually you can actually how to understand which hands you want to isolate call and have a little bit better understanding with all these kind of hands. The same range that you call 3-bets, for example. Let's see, he isolates, we get isolate to 18 blinds. And as you can see, the range that looks for raise call, somewhat close the range we call the 3-bets. I mean, from the button, from the cutoff, I mean, even the 7th line, this doesn't come off. But as you can see, the range is pretty like the same in these kind of situations. So you have a little bit problems with that. You just can make like, oh, so the range I call the 3-bets is the same range I isolate and call the 3-bets. I mean, call the raise link 3-bets, yeah. So for me, it's much easier to remember that range because I see a lot of people, they're just calling like limp 3-bets with 10-8 offsuit, they're calling with the all offsuited hands, ace-x hands, they're even calling with like queen 10, king 10 off. As you can see, these kind of hands are not playing so great against the limp 3-bet range. And the machine knows how to limp 3-bet, so if you use some these kind of hands, population will not gonna use these kind of lines with these kind of hands. They're just gonna limp call, and that's it. So for us, it's even worse that we don't get some dominated 10x hands, jack x hands. So we are in much worse shape with these kind of hands when we isolate call. So you have to be careful with offsuited hands. If you get much more deeper situations, you want to narrow your range with all your suited hands, what you call. Offsuited hands usually plays even in the position much poorly. So yeah, I mean, first things first, yeah, you have to just remember how to all the hands that you isolate, which are prettier, you have to call limp 3-bets for sure. And the range is like it's very understandable with which kind of hands you want to isolate call in your range. But yeah, if you make a little bit other changes,
but is it mostly because we are 100 big blinds, right? Like this 6-7 hands, right? Like it feels like they would not play the same if it's like 30 big blinds, right, or something.
Yeah, because they're checking back. I mean, that's the main point. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not isolating the guy. I mean, let's show you some. For example, let's make it like 36 blinds is on the big blind and chip leader.
No, it would be much more high card heavy. Yeah.
I mean that more polar. Not. I will say that because first thing first, he's half the range. He's just raising. I mean, that's much more. That's because now he understands that not only he wants your chips, but he has a chance if he gets you stacked, and with the raise he gets more chances to get stacked because the pot is much bigger on the flop on the turn. So now he's raising a lot more, and as you can see, the range he's using, I mean, there is not a lot of hands that he's just limping. I mean, there is some king x hands, but other than that, all the hands in some frequency he's just raising. So yeah, and you can usually raise a lot more because you'll not get 3-bets bluff less. Like as you can see, he's like 3-betting you 7.5x, and some guys maybe he's 3-betting you 9 blinds on a big blind. And usually hands that he uses is the highest hands that he like limp folds and lowest hands that he limp calls. So you see the like this range that usually works about these kind of hands that are close to call but not good enough to fold, but still like, and all our upper hands that we are just gonna fold. So you can usually use like these kind of hands for raising in position as a bluff against even the chip leader. And it works actually perfectly.
I'm not sure if it's right thinking, but I usually kind of, if I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, this feels close between raising or calling or folding, right? I just tribute them, right? Like when it's when it's kind of feels close between folding or not, I just seems close. Let's tribute.
Yeah. That's usually the right way to think about these kind of situations. If you feel that your hand is like you're not sure about limp calling or limp folding, you can use the third drawer and just raise it. I mean, not limp, I mean, sorry, calling or folding, you just use the third door and just raise. And actually, that works perfectly. I mean, I show you some other ICM situations where you can use that, but still. When we are covering the guy on the big blind, we want to use much more raising. As you can see, like here, maybe, for example, there's the 50 blinds and there's not so much all-ins. I mean, he cannot go all-in sometimes. Still, as you can see, he's raising a lot of hands. I mean, for machine, it's a lot. But yeah, when we make the situation that the guy on the big blind is covering us, the story changes. We are like not raising enough. We are playing from strategy limp call, limp fold, or limp raise.
No,
So
but I have a question. Like, I understand why it would do it, right? But
yeah,
like, it assumes that big blind kinda knows how to adjust to PKOs and play differently than in vanilla ones, right? So it's like, if he is still playing like he would play in vanilla one, right? He's not changing his strategy. Like, would our strategy even change? Like if he is just playing literally same strategy as he was playing in non-PKO one, I assume we play same strategy as we was playing in non-PKO also, right?
yeah,
Like,
and I understand your question. Usually, you have to see what players you're playing against, because there is no point about who plays what strategy on free slots and PKOs. You have to see how the player who sits in the big blind, how plays just, and you can see usually even after that guy is like limping and he's isolating 46% of the time, you can say for sure that he's not he's not like raising anything, because the guy I mean, he has a lot more bluffs that he should have. I mean, he's isolating too much.
yeah, I'm
So it's
thinking if
it's actually it's a good thing to think about these kind of situations, that if you see the guy who is isolating more than 50% of the time, you can just use the strategy limp 100% and you will not
I
be wrong.
am thinking more of a like I am really not thinking like, especially in lower stakes, people will find these 5-4 suited 6-4 suited like ISO raises, right? Because it's just like they have not studied it and they don't know that they need to do it, right? Like, so I'm thinking like most people would just not do them at all, right?
Yeah, that's the main point. Why the small blind gets big blind is always about the player who are playing, not the ranges or the
Yeah,
tier.
yeah,
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 of
yeah.
course you have some understanding how deviates or how the machine thinks in kind of these situations, but still, I mean, you have to just see your opponent. It's usually
Yeah,
the
it's,
like
it just feels like 75% left, 50 big blinds, and he's covering us slightly. In most cases in game, it would not. I don't think I would just limp everything, because I would think like he has studied this spot and knows that he needs to ISO raise 5-4 suited, right? Like that.
yeah,
That seems big leap of faith into opponent. And
yeah.
the
First things first, I think I will try. I mean, of course, I need the questions about these kind of situations, but if we have a discussion in this kind of situation, I think we're not gonna get to the post stop, because I have some ideas and some things I want to explain. So yeah, of course, I like discussions about kind of situations, and you have some pointers or the questions about some situations, feel free to ask. But if you want to like some way individual, like I don't know how you say, training session, I think this is not right thing, not right spot, because there is a certain other players who wants to listen, and I think if we make a discussion here and now, we are not gonna get to the post lab. And I mean, there is a lot of things I want to like talk about. So yeah, and we have a little bit limited time. So let's go, and I will try explain other things. And as you can see, usually the hands that he isolates in these kind of situations, or when he's chip leader, is the hands that he's comfortable with calling the limp 3 bets. As you can see, he gets 11 blinds limp 3 bet, and he usually, as you can see, comfortably calls all the suited hands. All the off-suited hands he just folds. So we have a little, I mean, and now you can see all the off-suited 10x hands now is calling, because we have a chance to get this knockout. So all these kind of hands from 0 get some plus CV decisions. Yeah, of course, the small blind can not isolate like that. Maybe there's some bluffs more, maybe some guys under bluff, but usually under bluff. So you can use actually the strategy here more polar, because the 50 blinds and less, he goes from offsuited hands as a limp 3-bets as a bluff, and uses, as you can see, a much bigger size. There is no like 9 blinds, 9.5 blinds. He used like 4x almost. Yeah, he used 4x. So for us, he uses some kind of offsuited ace-x hands, and nothing suited. Not these kind of hands that he used when he had like 100 big blinds, 200 big blinds deep, because he understands that SPR in some situations will be like on the flop when we call, how much will be 11. So it's like SPR will be 2 in these situations. So in some boards you're just gonna shove. I'm gonna show you some situation. For example, Jack 10-5. I'm a little bit interested how you can, what kind of strategy. Yeah, as you can see, he's just gonna shove. So he has some, he's gonna realize some his equity in some boards like very easily. He's just gonna play like all in. So there's no problem with that. What kind of boards still? Queen 10-5 maybe? Same thing, I think. Yeah, as you can see, Queen 10-5. Let's make it 10-8-5. Maybe we're gonna get some all-ins too. Just maybe. With the queen check, maybe. yeah, there's still some all-ins. So as you can see, when he gets shorter, like 50, 60 blinds deep, he wants to use some kind of hands. As a, I mean, some kind of hands for all-in some kind of boards. So it's a lot easier for him to play. When he plays like 100, 200 big blinds deep, he wants to use more suited hands. So it has more playability on the post-flop, because he understands that he's gonna play much more post-flop than in 40, 50 big blinds deep, because the range that he's gonna isolate will still construct with some, still construct some offsuited hands and hands that he wants to like comfortably isolate call. So, and same range I explained you like earlier, the range that he's defending against ISO call is the range that usually you call with all your 3-bets. So it's easy to remember. Yeah. In ICM situations, actually, there is some differences. For example, actually you can use it a lot. When you get like 2 tables or final table even, and you see the chip leader is going after you, and the chip leader has the more chips than you, you can actually punish the chip leader with some raises in position. For example, you get 2 tables, and the small blind can usually raise a lot more than he should. So he's raising some offsuited hands, offsuited hands, some trashy suited hands, and that's understandable. But as you can see, same thing goes here too. You can 3-bet these kind of hands very easily, and it works like clockwork, as you can see, because first things first, nobody gonna shove you like these kind of hands. Nobody's gonna like shove, maybe, I don't know, ace-x offsuited hands. Then actually there is some 3-bets even in these kind of situations. Let me show you. Yeah, as you can see, for example here, he's like raise 3-betting some kind of these hands, king 5 offsuited, king 5-4, and you'll not get that. I mean, first things first, usually people are gonna just jam these kind of hands a lot more. They're not gonna call these kind of pockets, they're just gonna shove. So for us they're gonna overfold these kind of hands, offsuited hands. So for us, it's much more easier to do these things, and still the range constructs with these kind of hands, which higher end of the folds and lower end with the calls. So it's very easy. As you can see, it works pretty understandable. Yeah, and the main actually things about preflop is that you have to understand against which opponent you're playing. So yeah, main points is the more passive the guy is in the big blind, the more we want to raise on the small blind. The more aggressive the guy is in the big blind, he isolates much more than he should. You limp more and limp 3-bet more. And you can, some guys even limp 3-bet like 30% of the time, 35% of the time. So it's crazy sometimes you see these guys. And as you can see, even when we are short stacked on the small blind, for example, and the big blind guy is not covering us. I mean, the big blind guy is covering us. He usually uses strategy to just like go with the best hands and use some bluffs with the offsuit hands. That's it. I mean, he's not. I mean, you don't have to call. Usually, I see the main like mistakes that usually people call with these kind of hands. 7-6, 5-6 offsuited, 5-4 offsuited. I mean, they think that I have a connector. It's good enough. I will call. Yeah, in some instances you can call it when you think that your opponent is not so great in the pulse slap. He's not going to use some different sizes and so on. So you can call sometimes these kind of hands, but I see a lot of mistakes people are making that they're calling these kind of hands. And as you can see, if you want to open up your range with the calls, go with the suited hands. As you can see, like 9-8 offsuit or 8-7 is -3. Zero is like 0.03 minus EV. And with these kind of hands, like 9-5 suited, it's like very close, much closer. I mean, 7-3, of course, it's a little bit worse. But still, as you can see, people are overfolding, overcalling these kind of hands and overfolding these kind of hands. I see a lot of guys who are folding like Queen 3 off suited, Queen 4 suited, even some King X suited hands. As you can see, these kind of hands you just can easily just limp call because the stacks are not so. I mean, they're much more shallow. So you get the flush draw on the flop. You can check raise. You can get it in. You can call always. You have backdoors. I have some much more playability in out of position, because you have to understand that you have to be like prepared when you limp call all your hands. Because if you call it too much or you use some trashy hands with the limp call, you get in real trouble. And earlier I explained about small blind strategy. You don't want to make like super like big win rates on small blind. I mean, you could do it, but I mean it's not the main thing, because small blind against big blind spots are not so like.
Okay, can I ask?
Yeah.
I've been trying not to ask many questions, but I think in this one, like, what would you do if a player was ISOing much more than he should? Like, my thinking is that we just open fold right away more. But like, if you know, there is this like very aggressive regulars who would literally ISO you like 50, 60, 70% of the time when you limp in, right? And how would you construct your small blind range versus them? Like, would you just fold more right away, or like limp raise more, or limp call more, or like I don't know.
As I explained it earlier, against these guys, I usually construct my range with the almost 100% limp, because they're isolating too much. And then I decide I just using much. I mean, as you can see here, he's just using for limp 3-bets as a bluff a6 hands. Against these guys who are isolating 60-70% time, now I'm gonna use all my King X hands. If he's isolating 100% time, you can just profitably limp 3-bet any 2-hand, and you'll get you will print the money. So it depends. It always depends. It's always
But
close.
you would not go and start folding more, right? Like you would not like.
No, of course not.
Okay,
No.
okay. That
Yeah.
was my main question.
Yeah, I'm still gonna fold these kind of hands. I don't see problem with that. I mean, I mean, these kind of hands I'm just folding pre-flop. These kind of hands I'm gonna fold against his isolate, and all these kind of hands I'm gonna just limp 3-bet. So I don't see the problem. Actually, it's cool. Queen 9, limp 3-bet. That's cool. Yeah, but still, as you can see, here it's easy to understand how he constructs his range. I mean, against the isolate 40%, he wants to limp 3-bet like this. If the guy is isolating 60% of the time, you can open up with all these kind of different hands, and it will be profitable. But rest assured, you be careful with these kind of hands to limp call. I mean, Usually I don't like playing out of position with offsuited king x hands because you get dominated against the higher king x hands. You get the top pair and don't know what to do. Usually you're gonna win small pot or lose some big pot. So I like to usually these kind of hands I usually like to use as a limp 3-bet. But yeah, still the range that we want to call is pretty understandable. So yeah, limp 3-bet I explained what we want to isolate. And second thing I want to explain that the more shallow we get, the more like trash hands we get to isolate. And that's actually pretty easy to remember. I mean, now you can see like Jack 8, Jack 9 hands or Queen 8 hands suited. He's not comfortable isolating them because there's some in the middle ground. He's feeling like he's pushing too much, and these kind of hands are okay to like check back and play on the flop. So usually just use the best suited hands, which is comfortable to isolate call, and he's not using like, for example, in 100 blinds deep. 100 blinds deep, he's like, as you can see here, it's like easy for him. It's like range that he's like calling 3-bets. He's isolating, and he has some trashy hands, and that makes sense, as you can see, because when he gets limp 3-bet, he just folds all the trashy hands and calls all the good hands, and it's easy to understand how it works. And the main thing is try to isolate much more these kind of hands when you're in a position, because I see a lot of my students, they're playing autopilot. They're like, oh, I have deep stacks, 8-7 suited, I'm just gonna check in the position. It's hand I could check, but as you can see, the machine is 100% of the time is isolating. And EV in this decision is different than check. I mean, of course, you're playing plus EV decision when you check with 8-7, but still, we want to make not the plus EV decisions, but the best decisions in poker. So it's always the problem, I mean, in every situation when we think about poker. For example, I don't know, the shove that maybe we make from the 50 blinds deep from the button with the ace deuce x, for example. Let's show you so you have a little bit better understanding. We need classic. As you can see, ace 3 offsuit is like very close decision. I mean, he's sometimes even ace deuce, he's just jamming or raising. And these always kind of situations I want to like think, if we shove and we are like mistakenly seeing that guy is overcalling us, or maybe direction is in the wrong way, maybe as you can see here. For example, he has some kind of 3-bets. 3-bets, yeah, here. No, I don't know. He's just like, he's making 3-bet. So if the all in he gets, he's gonna fold some hands. Yeah, that's the main thing. But if we like fold here, yeah, he has some. I mean, as you can see here, he has some kind of 3-bit folds in these kind of situations. He has some bluffs. So, for example, if you think our guys are not capable of bluffing, usually that means that our raise will be much more profitable than the shove. So, I always like to think in these kind of situations, when we like use like line like raising or shoving, and we see that these kind of decisions are very close, I usually go with the decision that makes me risk a little bit less with my stack. For example, if I make a mistake, for example, with ace deuce, I'm raising and the guy just maybe shoving too much, or I make a mistake. I mean, there is not the hand. This is not the hand I have to raise. Usually, I'm gonna lose like 0.01 big blind from EV, or a little bit even less. So I mean, that's not the end of the world. I mean, I made a mistake, but it's not like huge mistake. But if I made a mistake with the shove, 50 blinds, now I'm feeling I just can close up my tournament and go eat some ramen noodles. So that's it. So you have to like always question the first things first. what's the best decision? What's the best plus CV decision I can make in this every situation? That's the poker all about. I mean, you have to always think in these kind of categories. Not to think about, oh, this decision can make, I see the solid does this decision, that decision, that's all the cool. No, you have to always use the best plus CV decisions. That's it. So I see always the guys, oh, I can shove this hand, it's profitable. Yeah, of course, you can shove 100 blinds deep with the aces too, and it's profitable. It's no problem with that. I mean, you can do that. But I mean, that's the most profitable decision? I don't think so. So yeah. I mean, it's a little bit like we are going off the road about the small blind and the big blind, but I want to try to explain how you have to think in these kind of situations. And of course, a lot of guys you think about in that way, but I see sometimes people forget about it or feels like they just like machines, or they like to play like, oh, machine plays like that, I will play like for myself. No, you can usually push the envelope, push some kind of situations much further, so it's no problem with that. Okay guys, let's make it a 5-minute break, and then we continue with the post-flop, where there'll be much more interesting situations. Actually, in the post-flop we have 4 situations how we can get there. It's a limp check situation, limp call situation, we're raising and the big blind is calling. And I mean, there's still 2 things as limp 3-bet range. I mean, limp 3-bet and we get the post-flop, and raise 3-bet and we get the call. So it's not 4 but 5 things, for 5 situations how we get the post-flop. First things first is the situation where it's the 50 blinds deep and we get the limp check spot. I mean, that's the most easiest spot. We can actually, not the easiest spot, but I mean, we can like understand that these kind of situations gets most of it, because people nowadays still, I mean, some stable guys, I mean, from the stable, they like to isolate much more. But now the new meta is that isolating is not the thing anymore. I mean, they're still isolating like 40-50% of the time, but nothing crazy like 70-80% of the time. I mean, crazy numbers some guys do. But yeah, as you can see, when we go from reports, I mean, there's not a lot of sizes like 2 big blinds or even like 3 big blinds or 4.5. I mean, there is some kind of situations, but usually our strategy can make with the 1 blind bet and the check 60% of the time. And usually the flop is gonna check more. It will be more like 6-5-3, 4-5-3, and all the lowest boards. Because in these kind of boards, your range construction depends from the hands you want to check call, check raise, and check fold. So there is not like a lot of point of betting these kind of boards, because the machine thinks in these kind of boards he will get a lot of raises, as you can see.
Well, isn't it much simpler of like that he just have more 3 and more deuce, like in his range, much more like it's...
Yeah, because for example, all these 2s and 3s hands he's folding.
Yeah, it's like well, for me, like thinking is a bit simpler. I just say deuce or 3 on the flop, and I think I don't have I have them less, right? So I just check range.
Yeah, that's it. So I mean, actually, but there is like other side of this story, because for example, if the board comes like deuce 10 and the big blind check, in some ways you can think that our big blind guy who is from stable or is a good player or a very aggressive player, all his trashy hands with the deuce X hands, he's gonna isolate. So in some way, when you get in situations, for example, limp call, and you get the board like, for example, deuce 10. Our friend has a lot of deuce X hands, as you can see in isolate. Even for a machine, he has deuce. But our guy on the small blind, only deuce X hands he has, it's only suited. So in some way, as you think, the board is like not so draw heavy, and the board, I don't know, favors still for the big blind for isolated. But if you ask about who has more deuce X hands and 3X hands, it will be the big blind, because his bluffing range now consists with these kind of hands. So you have to be very careful. I see a lot of guys, they go crazy in these kind of situations. They think that, I mean, he has the 10x or repair or nothing, so they call. But you're not losing I mean, you're still losing for the value range, but you're losing the bluff range too, because it consists a lot of 2x hands that we can see in these kind of situations. And some guys even isolate 100% of the time these kind of hands. So you have to be a little bit careful in these kind of situations. Yeah, but still, I want to make reports and see that if you get isolated, still, I mean not isolated but checked, still the big blind is not like attacking crazy enough, and the strategy he uses actually in some middle-ish boards is that, as you can see here, yeah, there's 10 deuce, for example, he's like checking 100% time because he has less 2-6 hands than the big blind, because the big blind can get rid of these kind of hands. I mean, he can isolate, but he cannot fold because he gets the limp. I mean, his only options is a check or isolate. So these kind of hands he cannot fold as the small blind does. I mean, he's just folding these kind of hands. But the big blind, I mean, he has to, like, I don't know, be more aggressive on isolate or just to call. I mean, yeah, just the limp call. I mean, yeah, just isolate or just check. So there's no problem with that. But yeah, report shows that we're using usually the one blind size, and here starts the trickiest part. We bet some kind of hands with the one blind, and some kinds we just check. So as you can see, the lower the board is, the more we want to check some kind of hands. And the more like these kind of hands we get, like 8 high, 9 high boards, you're not gonna get a lot of folds. For example, I see a lot of people making mistake when the board comes like 8-4-3 rainbow or something, 8-3 deuce. We bet one big blind, and how many folds we're gonna get? Let's see. We're gonna get some, but it's not a lot. I mean, it's 50%. And I rest assure you, the people are calling much, much more. Against the one big blind, nobody gonna fold king 4 offsuit or king 5 offsuit. Nobody. Even with no backdoors. And these kind of hands, no way people are gonna fold. So yeah, of course, with the backdoors you call much more, but still, as you can see, you bet one big blind, and these kind of boards you get like 10% of the folds, 15% maybe folds. Maybe the fish is playing very passive, maybe you'll get like 20% of the folds, but that's it. So you have to think in these kind of situations that when you bet one blind, you're not getting any folds in these kind of boards. When the board came like ace x hands, or ace x6 or king x6 boards, of course you bet one blind and get some folds with 8 highs, 7 highs, 6 highs, and so on. So there's no problem with that. But still, as you can see here, I mean, these kind of folds, it's very hard to get. And I even think that people are overcalling nowadays, and small blind and against big blind game now is people are just not folding anything. They're over bluffing these kind of situations. They're overcalling, so you have to always be careful who you are playing against. But yeah, still the strategy is that in some boards we want to use check raise, check call, check fold lines. In some boards we want like to see bet 100% of the time. For example, like ace x hands, ace ace deuce. If not mistaken, the small blind just bets range. Or no, close to range, okay. Let's see the reports. But still, as you can see, it makes sense. Ace ace x hands, he just c-bets like almost 100% of the time. Because, and king, 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 and so on, so on. Usually it flop consists with some ace x hands. So you can easily just c-bet a lot more than you could. And the size usually goes with one blind. So there is not so many different sizes, as you will see in the when you raise on the pre-flop or I don't know limp call situations. There will be different sizes. That makes sense. But here, first thing is we're just betting one blind, and that's it. And how you can counter it? Yeah.
Would your frequency actually overall boards would be somewhere near 33? I think mine is probably closer to 50 or even more. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, in general, would you bet more 1BB on much more boards range than you should, like in theory?
I will say that the more I think the weaker player I have on the big blind, the more I see bet on the flop. But I nowadays I like to check a lot more because I have lines like check raises on the flop. I have some lines as check call, check raise turns, and so on, so on. So I use some different lines. I don't like to like autopilot these kind of situations and just bet one blind. That's it. Against the weaker players, I do. And against when I get a board like very dry, as like King X hands, King X boards or Ace X boards, usually I just bet one blind and printing money. Because people, as you can see on the Ace Days Deuce board, they have to float a lot of hands. As you can see, 60% of hands he just folds. He's floating Jack 4 suited, Jack 5 suited, I mean, even 9-7 offsuit, he's floating. Because on the big blind, he thinks that we are betting range. So you have to call all the King X hands, all the Queen X hands, and so on. So if you get more than 60% of the fold, which you will get against the weaker players, you are printing money. That's why you have to be very careful. In the dry boards, you can just see bet a lot more and you just get print money more. And as you can see, raises in these kind of situations are still a thing. As you can see, he's even raising like 9 and 4 of diamonds, which for me is a little bit crazy. But he thinks that if you're or c betting these kind of boards, which he does, you can raise profitably. And still, the big blind has some ace-x hands that he checked. I mean, usually it's suited weaker hands and some offsuited hands. So he's not capped as some other guys or opponents may think about these kind of situations. But still, yeah, one blind we get, and usually we get all sorts of problems. For example, then 5-3, for example, and still we can just easily just see bet like one blind, and it works perfectly. As you can see, he has some sizes with the one blind, and the big blind in these kind of boards raises a lot of 10x that he has top pairs, and usually you can counter it in that way. What I see in your limits, and I mean in my limits even, people are playing so passive is small blind against big blind, and they're not raising enough boards in position. And you actually get two things. First of all, you get all the trash to fold when you raise in position. I mean, some mediocre hands like 6-4, for example, or 6 deuce, for example, which is full on raise, and so on, so on. And even some mediocre top pairs you can raise in position, because you can start value betting your opponent much more in these kind of lines. When he bets like one blind, he gets a very good price actually for all his overcards to realize his equity. So he feels like in some way secured. He bets one blind, he's not getting enough raises, so he just like easily bets one blind and see the turns. Our task is in these kind of situations is we want to raise much more, because I will show you, for example, when we isolate a raise in position 3.5, the machine is raising like 8.5, like 15% of the time. I mean, even 13.5 blinds. It's crazy amount. I mean, nobody's gonna raise you 10-6 suited, nobody's gonna raise you 10-7 suited, nobody's gonna raise you 6-4 enough of the time, or even 5x hands. It's even crazier. As you can see, he's raising like ace-5 offsuit. Nobody can do that. Usually they're gonna do it overpairs, some strong 10x hands, and maybe some bluffs. That's it. But still they're gonna underbluff. So I will show you the, for example, I hope that machine gonna work, but let's see. Yeah, we're betting one blind. Our opponent is raising 50% of the time, and we're getting reaction that nobody's gonna bet 3-bet like 20% of the time. I mean, it's crazy. Nobody's gonna do that. So we want to lock this reaction and make it maybe 8% of the time. I don't know. I mean, there's no point of... Or maybe we can just do like this. Yeah, overpair is gonna raise all the strongest hands, maybe some bluffs. Yeah. Apply. Oh no. Oh, we want to lock this kind of hands. Okay. So yeah. Let's see, it's gonna change because now it's yeah, it's 9%, and now we're gonna see how much of the times big blind is gonna raise. It was 15%, now it's 90% of the time. I mean, it's not a lot actually, but yeah, you see the point. I mean, if you're not, I mean, we can even see that some folds we are getting much more. For example, not all people gonna call, I don't know, queen for suited or some kind of these kind of hands. So you can actually get some more folds than it should, and maybe somebody's gonna fold 3 deuce suited, or some 3x hands gonna fold. Some guys maybe gonna fold, I don't know, Jack 9, for example. So yeah, you can actually lock these things and play with
But
them.
I can't understand what you mean of like not looking on these dry boards, right? They overfolding, not rebetting enough. But like, would you say as board gets more wet, more draw heavy, you kind of start doing less of it? You just assume people will play more correctly versus raises.
Yeah. Usually the dry boards I like to use as Jack X hands, Queen X hands, and King X hands. I like to usually raise all my top pairs in position because, as I explained it, you're not getting bet 3-bets enough, and if you get them, you can just fold because people are not bluffing in these kind of situations enough.